Hi everyone, Richard Phillips back at you with another modern deck. Today I thought I would play a version of the deck that got me noticed more or less. This is the first deck that I kind of made my own and I innovated it throughout the course of especially 2015 into 2016. It's gotten many new additions since then, but like 2015, 2016, this is what I was working on almost exclusively. And then through 2017, I still played it, but moved on to other things. And now in 2018, I'm trying to see if it can still be competitive in today's meta. So what we have today is a Gifts Ungiven deck that is looking to abuse the card Unburial Rites. So you'll see this as like a Gifts Ungiven or Gifts Rites deck. So Unburial Rites is a card that lets you flashback, or sorry, you want to cast it from flashback. And you want to put a fatty in the graveyard to reanimate. In this deck, we're going to be playing today with Gristlebrand and Iona, Shield of Emeria, and I'll talk about my selection of those two in just a second. How you're getting them in the graveyard is you're casting the card Gifts Ungiven. Gifts Ungiven lets you search for up to 4 cards with different names and reveal them, and your opponent has to put 2 of them in your graveyard. So if you only choose 2 cards, they will both go in the graveyard, and you will choose Unburial Rites in either Iona or Gristlebrand. That's kind of the key to the deck. So we'll talk about some of the other things that go on with it. That's like our main strategy. We have an alternate win strategy of casting a large Secure the Wastes, or by beating our opponent down with Snapcaster Mages. We also have a Lingering Souls, which you can use to clock your opponent for 2 or 4 a turn, and then we have a few different man lands. The reason why for the diversification of threats, such as the single Lingering Souls, the single Secure the Waste, and the diversification of the man lands, is because you want to be able to gift for piles of cards that are not just Unburial Rites and Gristlebrand, let's say. If your opponent, plays like a main deck like Leyline of the Void or Rest in Peace for some reason, you don't want to be like strictly without a win condition. One thing that's very interesting about this list is that we are only playing 2 counterspells in the 60. We're playing 2 copies of Cryptic Command, and in a combo control deck such as this, Cryptic Command does a little bit more than just counterspells. This is our only out to cards like Bridge, to cards that will somehow shut us down, like I said, like a main deck. Leyline of the Void is very problematic in this deck. I guess we also have Esper Charm for that. But Cryptic Command is going to be using a lot of modes in this deck that are not necessarily just counter draw, which you'll see most decks utilize Cryptic Command in that way. We have 2 sweepers, which is low. Usually I play 3 sweepers. The thing is that against creature decks, a reanimation of Gristlebrand is usually better than trying to find a sweeper. And I did not believe that with the meta the way it currently is, that a diversification of wraths, such as playing 1 Wrath of God, 1 Day of Judgment, 1 Supreme Verdict, would be better than playing a strictly better, or not, I guess not strictly better, but a uncounterable wrath, such as Supreme Verdict. We have 5 discard spells in the main, 2 Thought Seizes, and 3 Inquisition of Kozilek, or discard only, plus 2 Collective Brutality. This gives us a lot of play against combo decks, as well as control decks. You'll see that between the discard and the threats, we actually have a pretty reasonable matchup against control. Hopefully we play against a control deck. Our removal is split between 3 paths and 3 fatal pushes, which means that we have 6 removal spells for fast creature decks. Search for Azcanta and Collective Brutality can allow us theoretically to put Unburial Rites and Iona or Unburial Rites and Gristlebrand into our graveyard without actually casting a Gifts Ungiven, and gives this deck a new dimension that it can play on. So we don't necessarily have to cast Gifts Ungiven in order to get the combo, which is one of the reasons why we're down to 3 copies. In terms of cantrips, we will play the 4 Serum Visions because it allows us to dig the furthest in our deck, and since we're combo control, that's important. We're also playing 2 Opts. We want to set up either Gifts Ungiven, Supreme Verdict, or Cryptic Command almost in every matchup on turn 4. So using these cantrips is very important to get to that point, because turn 4 in this deck is crucial, and we need to be able to hit one of our high impact spells that turn. 2 Esper Charm. are very interesting. In this deck especially, they'll be using significantly more modes than to just draw 2 cards. If we don't have anything to do past turn 3, we can draw 2 cards. But more often than not, we are going to combo it with our discard package to make our opponent discard cards out of their hand, and then hopefully eventually be able to win. Like, we're a combo control deck. We don't necessarily have to combo them turn 4 into turn 5. We can play a longer game, but we're not set up necessarily for that longer game like some other decks are that have more counter spells. So we're going to be using the Esper Charm sometimes pretty aggressively to make our opponent discard cards, or destroy pesky enchantments such as like Rest in Peace or Blood Moon or things like that. Our lands, we have 4 man lands. Celestial Colonnade is easily the best man land in these colors. The problem is that this deck is base black-blue, especially on the early turns. So if you play a turn 1 Celestial Colonnade, then you untap with it, the only cards that can really help you cast are these Serum Visions. You don't want to be casting a Path to Exile on turn 2. And we really need the black to be available to us in the early game, which is why we are playing 2 copies of Creeping Tar Pit. It's a slightly worse man land. You'll see some situations where it's better, such as at like Pressured Planeswalkers and things like that. But this is more or less just a concession to how many high-impact spells we have to cast on turns 1 and 2 that require black mana. We're playing 8 fetches so that we can find our 1 Godless Shrine, 2 Hallowed Fountains, and 2 Watery Graves, as well as our 5 basics. We also have 1 Field of Ruin that we can either search for in a gifts package or hope to draw naturally that can help us take our opponent off of some fast mana starts. We'll move on to the sideboard now, guys. We have 3 copies of Nihil Spellbomb against graveyard strategies. We don't want to be playing Rest in Peace because the symmetrical effect is really bad for us. We rely on our graveyard, so playing Nihil Spellbomb is important in this deck. We have the ability to bring in 4 Spell Quellers and 2 Geist of St. Traphs. Those are in matchups where our reanimation package isn't necessarily the strongest. As well as, like, if our opponent is definitely going to be boarding in a way that they will max out on graveyard hate, like a lot of white strategies can, where they'll be bringing in like multiple Rest in Pieces and possibly even more cards that can help destroy the graveyard, like especially the Abzan matchup is a great example, where our opponent will have like Scavenging Ooze plus Rest in Peace. We want to have an alternate win strategy so that we don't get just blown out when we try to cast our Unburial Rites combo. Also, the card Surgical Extraction can get us real bad in that specific type of scenario where we're casting a gift, putting 2 cards in the graveyard, and then just kind of going all in on that. For various like big mana and combo decks, we have a few counter spells outside. We got 2 Negates, 1 Dispel, and a Ceremonious Rejection. And then if we want to, like once again, if we're playing against a mid-range strategy where we're trying to grind our opponent out, we can bring in 2 more copies of Lingering Souls, which should give us some game against strategies where just like putting stuff on the board is very good. And with that, guys, we'll move on to the first match of our competitive league, and I'll see you there. Alright, guys, welcome to the first match here. So this is a very interesting hand. Wow. Alright. So we have a Path to Exile, 2 Collective Brutality. So we can get rid of this Gristlebrand, but we still need a way to either naturally draw the Unburial Rites or get it in our graveyard somehow. We also have the Snapcaster Mage, which will allow us rebuy this. We're also low on lands. So I think this is definitely on the worst side of hands we could keep. We're going to have to get blue-black with this Flooded Strand, which means that we won't really be able to cast the Path to Exile profitably here. But I think on average this is an okay keep. Alright, so our opponent has played a Hallowed Fountain, which leads me to believe that they are a some sort of control deck. If they're including red, I'm not sure. So one thing that is very important in this matchup is that our opponent does not get down the card specifically Search for Azcanta, and I think that that is important enough where we need to Thoughtseize our opponent on turn 1, taking 5 damage for it. Yeah, and look at that. Okay, so there's the Search for Azcanta. That's a card that would have absolutely buried us if they would have been able to resolve it, and we were able to prevent them from doing so. Alright, so our opponent casts their Serum Visions. Now, it looks like our opponent's just on straight blue-white control, so this will be easy to see more or less how our combo control deck will stack up against him. Next turn, I'm definitely going to cast this Collective Brutality and take away their Sphinx's Rev, because I want to try to use my mana each turn. See what they're doing with their scries here. One good thing about our start is that our opponent probably thinks we're on Death Shadow. With the turn 1 fetch into Thoughtseize hand. Okay, so our opponent has played this island. Oh, okay. I got rid of the Glacial Fortress too, but we'll just have to remember that the Glacial Fortress is still in their hand. Okay, so Druid Inquisition, which isn't great. I'm going to be mana efficient here. We don't need the 2 Collective Brutalities. I am not going to discard the Gristlebrand yet. Okay. So we know our opponent has drawn Spreading Seas, which is not good for us, and a Detention Sphere. All right, our opponent is casting a Serum Visions that it looks like they drew. Then they'll probably play the Glacial Fortress, and then they'll Spreading Seas our Plains, which puts us in a kind of a rough spot here if we don't... Yeah, put us in a rough spot here if we don't draw a land. Okay, we did draw a land, which is good. The Collective Brutality is getting significantly worse. Well, actually, no, I guess it's not. Yeah, it's really not. I'm trying to think of what the best play here is. The best play here could probably be to get rid of this Gideon Jura by casting Snapcaster and Thought Seizing. Our life total isn't super important in this matchup, so I'm going to do that. Of all of the spells that we have here, the only one that can actually get rid of the Gideon Jura is the Thought Seize. So we will go ahead and cast the Thought Seize. And it looks like our opponent drew another Spreading Seas. So this Spreading Seas is not as bad as the other one. We're definitely going to take the Gideon Jura. They want to cast the Spreading Seas here. It's not. We don't need the second black source. Isn't very important to our deck. All right, so our opponent played the Field of Ruin and the Spreading Seas, and they drew a 2-mana spell. They drew another Spreading Seas. Okay, so they've taken us completely off of black mana, which can be problematic. We only have a white-black source now in our deck. We'll get in with the Snapcaster Mage, and we'll pass the turn. When our opponent has the triple Spreading Seas hand, things can go kind of poorly for us. One good thing is that our opponent still has no clue what kind of deck we're playing. Alright. Serum Visions was a very good draw. Alright, and Unburial Rites. Interesting. Alright, we're going to bottom both of these because we still need lands. Alright, our opponent, Field of Ruin, the Watery Grave. Okay. We'll take a black source, because there's no reason for us to have a blue source again. And there's no reason to cast any of our spells there. We know that our opponent has Detention Sphere in hand, and they don't appear to be drawing anything else, so we will just pass for now. We'll begin combat here. We'll attack for 2. And I think here we do want to get the Gristlebrand in the graveyard, so we will drain our opponent and discard the Gristlebrand, because we can't actually cast the Gristlebrand now that there's 2 Spreading Seas on those 2 cards. This is kind of showing our opponent what kind of deck we're on, which I think is fine. Also, if they want to counter this, that's also fine with me. Alright, they are going to scry 2, then draw 2. Glimmer's an interesting card, and I've seen some versions of the deck play Glimmer before. Alright, so path, leak. Well, we don't really care about the path, so we'll just take the leak. If our opponent wants to path us, that's fine. I think they're going to have to at some point. Alright, is this a Gideon? Alright, this is a Gideon. Alright, our opponent plays an island. So then we know that they have path, detention sphere in their hand. Alright, so we've drawn a fatal push, which doesn't do anything. We might as well cast this Inquisition on our opponent right now and take the detention sphere, because the detention sphere can get rid of a Search for Us Kanta, which would be one of our best draws. So we do want that gone. All we know is that our opponent has 2 Path to Exiles. Alright, our opponent's going to get in there with the Gideon. We'll take this hit. I'm not sure if we can take another hit, but we can definitely take this one. I think this is just unlucky that we haven't drawn any lands here. We'll attack them. We'll see if our opponent wants to path the Gideon or the Snapcaster Mage. Nope. They seem to be fine. Yeah, it's just very unfortunate. And we have 23 lands in this deck. It's a lot of lands. All right, our opponent. We're gonna make our opponent use the. Well, I guess they don't have to do anything, but we'll see if they path the Snapcaster at the end of turn, because we're gonna leave it back to block this time. Oh no, they yeah, I'm not really sure what I was doing there. All right, our opponent's gonna Glimmer. We're just so far behind now that I don't think we can possibly win. Yep. That'll end the game. Alright, so our opponent does know that we have a Gristlebrand in our deck. They have not seen the Unburial Rites or anything like that. So how do we want to board in this matchup? I definitely don't want the Supreme Verdicts. Pretty sure that those are just very, very bad. If our opponent brings in Geist of St. Traft, it could be a little bit of an issue, but we're going to be bringing in our Lingering Souls, and hopefully we can block them. Alright, so those will come in. I don't love Fatal Push in this matchup because it doesn't really hit anything that our opponent has other than Celestial Colonnades. So we'll take them out. We definitely want the Negates and the Dispel. Another thing about this matchup is that for the most part we want to be the aggressor in it. I'm going to take out a Collective Brutality and an Inquisition, because we don't want to just be like ripping apart their hand straight up. We're going to bring in 2 Geists of St. Trafts. Another thing that we could consider here is cutting some elements of our gifts package. I think if our opponent had slightly more counters, we would consider doing that, because getting a Gifts Ungiven countered is really bad, but I think the opportunity cost is really high of starting to cut the gifts, because it makes like so many of these cards here much worse. The other question is, do we want both Gristlebrand and Iona? I think we do, because I could see in this matchup very easily us being able to hard cast it. I'm going to cut one more Path to Exile here, and I'm going to bring in a Nihil Spellbomb, which can hopefully turn off 1 Snapcaster usage and possibly a Search for Kanta. Alright, this hand appears to be much better. We can get the Hallowed Fountain into Serum Visions right away and start setting up more land drops. Especially in this matchup, having the Unburial Rites in our hand is fine. Thoughtseize and a Cryptic Command. Kind of like having both of those on top. Those are both fine. We drew a land so that we have land set up for next turn. and the turn after that even. I like playing the Creeping Tar Pit here. Apologize, guys. I still have Miracle bluffing on from when I was playing Miracles earlier in the day. So that'll be popping up from time to time. I found myself that it's easier if you're playing any sort of Miracles deck to just keep it on, as opposed to try to like turn it on and off. Another question here is whether or not we want to opt end of turn, because we already know we want to draw the card on top of our deck, so it's basically like, do we want to draw one card further the turn after? And I don't necessarily think that we do. Alright, so we will play the Polluted Delta, and we will definitely Thought Seize our opponent here and take a Gideon or something like that. Path. Okay, so we definitely have to take Jace. Jace is really, really good in this matchup. So that we're going to leave our opponent with Path, Glimmer, and a Verdict, as well as a couple of lands. This time we will opt at the end of the turn. We also have a nice 1-mana answer to the... okay, so our opponent drew a Spreading Seas. We're going to do it on the Creeping Tar Pit. That's fine. So they've used Mystic Gate. Alright, at the end of turn we will opt. Serum Visions. Yeah, let's keep that on top of our library. And I'm not going to fetch with the Polluted Delta here because, well... yeah, I guess we haven't bottomed anything. Yeah, there's really no reason, I guess, not to do this. Alright, so we did draw a land, which is good. Alright, we're going to use the this one only to cast the Serum Visions. Actually, both of these are great. We're going to top them. We will play the Swamp here. And we'll just go ahead and Thought Seize our opponent one more time. Alright, we will take the Glimmer here, and we'll leave our opponent with basically a hand that just doesn't function. It's all defensive cards. Alright, so we will cast the Serum Visions and draw the planes that's on top of our library, and then we can scry these either to the top or the bottom, depending on how we want them. And I think we want one more land, but not the second land. Alright, so here, assuming our opponent doesn't do anything, I am going to get the Snapcaster Mage on board at the end of this turn here. Alright, so our opponent is trying to mess up our scry. And I think we're fine with that. We'll just go ahead and get an island. The land destruction plan is very effective against us. Alright, so we will Snapcaster. If our opponent wants to counter a Snapcaster, that's fine. Alright, opt. Lingering Soul, that's a great draw. We can try to get our opponent to use the Supreme Verdict on a quote-unquote bad card. Alright, looks like our opponent's going to destroy our Hallowed Fountain during our draw step. Okay, that's fine. So we have one more land in our deck after this. Alright, we'll move to our main phase here. We will play the Field of Ruin. Attack with the Snapcaster Mage. And then we are just going to give our opponent the first half of the Lingering Souls. We don't want to cast both halves of it into the Supreme Verdict, because we know that they have that. Alright, so they've used this, they've used this. Alright, the search for Escanta is not great. Our opponent's going to be able to flip that very quickly. Our opponent drew another Field of Ruin. Okay, and they are just fine with using the Supreme Verdict now. Alright, so we have mana open this turn, and we won't necessarily have it open other turns, so I'm going to take this opportunity now to get the Celestial Colonnade off the field. Because we know for a fact that we're not going to be using our mana that turn. And we're not sure in other turns if that's going to be the case. Alright, so we drew a Celestial Colonnade, which is really good. We have a couple of options here. We can do one of the more unusual plays, which is that we can hard cast the Unburial Rites to bring back the Snapcaster Mage, which would let us draw another card, which is an interesting line. We can also just snap or flash back the Lingering Souls and hold up Cryptic Command, and I think I like that better. So we'll do that, and we'll flash back the Lingering Souls, hold up Cryptic Command, hold up Dispel. Alright, our opponent's going to be able to flip the Search for Escanta here. We possibly should have held the Field of Ruin to destroy the Search for Escanta. I was planning on bouncing it with a Cryptic Command. Alright, looks like our opponent's just going to go ahead and just draw right now. Yeah, that was probably correct. We probably should have... destroyed the... waited a little bit and destroyed the Search for Escanta. Our opponent has found a Spreading Seas. Alright, so this we are going to counter, and we'll draw a card. We want to kind of turn the corner now. Alright, so that's a card we can't cast. But we can get in... Okay, so we know our opponent has 2 paths, so we shouldn't get in with the Celestial Colonnade. I was going to say, if they didn't have a white source up, we would definitely have done that. Alright, so we know that our opponent has... How many cards that matter? They have 2 Path to Exiles for sure. I basically need to figure out whether or not I want to use this Esper Charm to make them discard cards, or if I want to use it to draw cards. And I think I'm just going to fire it off now and draw some cards. Alright, cool. We drew a Lingering Souls, which is good. I'm going to use that now, and we'll still have Dispel up. So our opponent is burying us in card advantage off of the Escanta. The thing is that in this matchup, there's significantly fewer cards than usual that matter to them. Sphinx's Revelation is not one of the ones that doesn't matter. It's good that we have the Dispel. Okay, we don't have another land to fetch with that. And our opponent's probably going to get us off the black source here. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Nope. We do have, more lands in the deck, obviously. It's just we don't have basics. Alright, so we will cast the Opt here. Looking for that basic, or looking for that black source, rather. Nile Spellbomb. Alright, there's no reason to not cast the Nile Spellbomb here, so we'll do that. And we'll get in at our opponent for 4. This does put our opponent on a clock. It's not something... Okay, they just path... Okay, they're pathing a Spirit. That's fine. We are playing 5 basics, which is a lot for a 23 land deck that's in 3 colors like this. I don't think that we necessarily did anything to warrant this. Like, I guess I did scry Plains to the top, but... Alright, so it looks like our opponent has Dispel backup, but we're going to force them to use it here. Okay, yep, our opponent has Dispel backup. Smart on our opponents to play around that. Alright, we drew Path to Exile. Okay, I think I'm going to offensively use the Path to Exile here. So I'm going to actually path that spirit so that our opponent needs to either respond to this or do something else, or that... okay, so I would not like to use that, and then that would mean the Detention Sphere doesn't take away my other 2 souls. Which seemed like, maybe not the best use of mana, but it seemed at least reasonable, I would say. Alright, cool. We drew a Search for Azcanta. We're so far behind at this point that we kind of have to resolve this Search for Azcanta. Like, we have to jam it, basically. We can't wait for even, like, a discard spell or something like that. So we'll just jam it here. If our opponent has a counterspell, they have a counterspell. Okay, they've negated it. It's not good for us. Our opponent gets to keep digging for cards that matter. They got a Spreading Seas that time. Okay, they're going to take us off our white source. And a Gideon. Alright, well, Gideon is not at its best in this kind of situation. Okay, Snapcaster Mage is not honestly the worst. We will attack Gideon with the 1 that I can attack with. And then in this case, I think it's more important that we get the Serum Visions here, because that would allow us to flash back a Lingering Souls. Alright, so that resolves Serum Visions. So if we can draw a black source, like a natural black source off of this Serum Visions, we can flash back the Lingering Souls. Alright, that's not one. Do we want a Gifts Ungiven? We can find 4 lands with the Gifts Ungiven. I don't think that's good enough. First off, I don't think it's resolving, and second off, I think we're a little bit too late. It's a little too late to the party for Gifts Ungiven at this point. Our opponent took a Path to Exile. So Path to Exile does let them remove one of their cards, but it's honestly not super great in this matchup. Our opponent's just turning the Gideon into a creature. We'll take 4 here. Alright, opponent found a Serum Visions. Opponent's casting another Serum Visions. So they use that, they've used the Spreading Seas, they used the Sphinx's Rev. So they have 3 paths in hand. Or I guess they've used 1 path, so they have 2 paths in hand. Alright, very good. So we will play that land. And we're going to serve all these at the Gideon. Okay. Okay, so our opponent's just using up all of the Lingering Souls tokens, or not all the or using up all their paths on our Lingering Souls tokens, which is not, it's not ideal, but it's fine. We're going to search up another black source here. We'll get the black-white source because we don't have black or white mana right now, and we will use this to flash back the Lingering Souls. Alright, cool. So now we can chump block the Gideon and still kill it next turn if they decide to animate it. Serum Visions is fine. Alright, I think this we actually do have to pick a counter, or pick a fight over. We will have to negate that. Okay. And our opponent found use for a mana leak, which is awful, because we shouldn't... I don't know. Mana leak's just not usually very good in this matchup, but it just happened to be here. Alright, so we have one more untapped black source in the deck. Our opponent's used up all these paths, so we don't know any of their cards in their hand. They are down to 5, which is nice. Okay, now our opponent is casting a Rest in Peace. We're fine with that. We didn't really have anything on our graveyard that was worthwhile anyway. Oh man, a Geist is unfortunate, because our opponent probably doesn't actually have any answers to Geist anymore in their deck. Ugh. Yeah, there's a chance the Nihil Spellbomb was a little bit of an overboard on my part. Because it cycles for a card, in most situations, we just haven't had open black mana this whole game. It's usually not like the worst card to include in a deck. But in this case, it hasn't been great. So there's a chance that was a little bit of an overboard on my part. Our opponent doesn't seem to have anything in their hand that really matters. Okay, they found a Cryptic Command, which, I mean, you know, that'll counter a spell of ours, but I guess they were going to do that anyway. Our opponent pathing our creatures, that's fine. Drop us to... Yeah, this actually will kill us. Unless we draw... I'm not sure what we'd have to draw. I guess we'd have to draw... Oh, no, I can't think of anything that saves us here. Yeah, that's not going to save us here. So our opponent at the end of the turn is going to cast a Cryptic Command to bounce or to tap our spirits, and that'll be the game. Or they might just wait until their own turn to do it. Nope, they're going to do it now, and we'll just concede to that. Unfortunate. Alright guys, well we'll try to shake it off, be back for round 2. I don't think I necessarily played that super well at the one point there, where I could have waited on the Field of Ruin for the Azcanta, but our opponent just wouldn't have flipped the Azcanta. We had to play the land there. So I think it was important for us to get value off of it there. I don't know, guys. Alright, well we found another opponent, so we'll begin this match. See if we can rebound, just like we did last week, from 0-1 to 4 or to 4-1. Alright, this hand's great on the play. Let's just play a... Let's just play an Inquisition on turn 1 if we want it. The Inquisition would be good against decks like Tron that would be trying to set up like Tron on turn 1, but against creature decks it's not super important. I guess this hand does have the ability to gain quite a bit of life. So I do think I like getting a white-black land here on turn 1. Because we already have the 2 here, and then that means that next turn we can just play the tapped Hallowed Fountain under like 90% of situations. So we have the Godless Shrine. Take a look at our opponent's hand. Alright, our opponent is playing a mid-range strategy, like 4-color Death Shadow. Alright, so which of these cards can't we beat? We can definitely beat Tarmogoyf. We can definitely beat Terminate. We can beat Stubborn Denial, although that's not great. We probably don't even care if they Thoughtseize us, honestly. Like, if they Thoughtseize us next turn, what are they going to do? Take, like, a Fatal? Well, I guess. Alright, we'll just take the Thoughtseize because that is actually turning off their Death Shadow a little bit, which is kind of interesting. So we know that our opponent has those cards in hand. The Collective Brutality is not great. It's not even really going to get us much value. We don't really care about their Abrupt Decay, except if we draw exactly Search for Azcanta. Our opponent just plays their Polluted Delta and passes. I'm going to just play the Tapped Hallowed Fountain here. There's no reason for us to get aggressive here. Our opponent doesn't really have a hand that's doing anything. Unless they drew a land here, they're going to have to just pass. Yeah, they didn't draw a land. It's good. At the same time, we're not really doing anything. We're looking for the card Gift Sudden Given here. Alright, our opponent found a Mishra's Bauble, so they won't have to discard the hand size. They're looking at the top card of their own library. If it's a land, they will not fetch. If it is a land, yeah, if it's a land, they will not fetch. If it is not a land, then they are fetched. So that means that they most likely have a land on top. Actually, they almost exclusively have a land on top. Okay. Alright, cool. Alright, so we'll just play the island for now, and we'll pass the turn. We will most likely just Esper Charm to draw some cards here. So we still know 5 of the 8 cards on our opponent's hand. It would just make sense for them to cast something like a Tarmogoyf here. Tarmogoyf would be a 2 or 3/4. And I am just going to draw with the Esper Charm here. We can untap and Fatal Push. Okay. So we'll do white and black, and I will draw 2 cards. Okay. So what would be ideal here is if we can draw a land. I guess I should have been a little bit more specific, but that's not honestly the worst. All right, so we will cast the Serum Visions. Opt and Gifts Ungiven again. We'll put the second gifts on the bottom. We will draw another Creeping Tar Pit. We can very easily win this game by just attacking our opponent with a bunch of man lands, which is kind of cool. We're going to take the opportunity to Fatal Push our opponent right now. We know that they have a Stubborn Denial, and we don't want to give them value off of that card by letting them untap with the mana open for it. Alright, so our opponent drew another land. See what our opponent wants to do here. Alright, our opponent is going to play a small Death Shadow. Alright, so they still have a Stubborn Denial in hand. We have an interesting decision here, which is, do we want to path at the end of the turn? One reason to path at the end of the turn is that our opponent still can't use Stubborn Denial, and that would give us access to the most mana next turn, which would be 5. So we could cast Gifts Ungiven and still pay for the Stubborn Denial, which I think I like, actually. We get a little bit blown out here if our opponent has a way to like cycle with a Street Wraith here. Alright, our opponent does not. Which is good. So we still know the 3 cards in our opponent's hand are Abrupt Decay, Terminate, and Stubborn Denial. They don't have red mana. Alright, we're going to play the Creeping Tar Pit here. And we're actually just going to pass the turn. We don't want our opponent to necessarily think that we have a card like Gifts Ungiven in our deck. Our opponent found red mana. Liliana of the Veil. Alright, I think in response to that, we do want to cast the Gifts Ungiven. Yeah, I think I like this. And now the question is what do we want to get with the Gifts Ungiven? So we know that our opponent has a Terminate in their deck. Or sorry, in their hand, rather. We can still reanimate the Gristlebrand and just use it to draw 7 cards. And I honestly don't see how our opponent can win from that position. Because we'll be able to play it through a Stubborn Denial. Yeah, honestly kind of like that. I don't think there's any way our opponent can beat that. The other thing we can do, we're at 1, 2, 3, we're at 6 lands. There's a lot of cards our opponent can't beat in our deck. There's, I think, probably just getting 4 cards that, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we want the Gristlebrand or not. I think just getting 4 cards that are very hard for our opponent to deal with is probably the best thing. So we're gonna get a Snapcaster Mage. We're gonna get a Gifts Ungiven. I didn't say Inquisition. Okay. Let's see. This is Magic Online doesn't make this very easy. Okay, so I didn't want that Inquisition. I wanted a Snapcaster. Okay, good. I want a Secure the Wastes, because our opponent just can't beat the card Secure the Wastes. I want a Lingering Souls, or at least most likely. I don't think they can beat it. And I want a... Honestly, a Search for Escanta is probably not bad either. Yeah, let's take a Search for Escanta. Cool. Alright, so those are our choices there. The Lingering Souls is great because either hand or graveyard will still be able to get Lingering Souls. We'll be able to get souls out of it. And we'll probably just get rid of this Collective Brutality. Or we'll get rid of the Opt. The Opt is just, or we'll cast the Opt and I guess we'll change when our opponent ticks up the Liliana of the Veil. I guess there's some merit to getting Gifts Ungiven again. I was thinking about getting Gifts Ungiven, but I think these are higher impact. If we get the Snapcaster Mage, we get the Snapcaster, Gifts Ungiven. Okay, so our opponent's just conceding. I figured it was something like that, where it didn't really matter what our piles were. They were just going to concede to that. All right, in this matchup especially, we want the Lingering Souls. Lingering Souls are great in this matchup. The Iona is bad because our opponent's playing 4 colors. We prevent them from casting black spells. That turns off a lot of stuff, but... yeah, I mean, I guess putting it on black's not the worst. Yeah, they can't cast turn. Yeah, alright, alright. I talked myself back into it. We want that. Some cards that are bad in this kind of matchup is our Thoughtseizes, especially. Every card in their deck is 3 CMC or lower, and usually you want to cut discard in the mirrors anyway. I'm honestly considering cutting all of it, and I think it's probably correct to just cut all of it. We'll bring in the Nihil Spellbombs. Our opponent's deck can't really function with no graveyard most of the time, which is cool. We'll definitely bring in the Dispel, and I also want to bring in 2 Geists. Geists can close the game really, really quickly, especially against one of their like hyper Death Shadow hands. All right, I really like our configuration here. We'll submit that. We're basically boarding into a plan that doesn't care very much about our opponent's discard. That's kind of our hope, is that we're hyper redundant. There also could be some merit to cutting the cryptic commands. Getting a cryptic command Stubborn Denial is really, really bad. I don't really see any cards that I'd want instead. If we think our opponent is boarding out all their removal, the Spell Quellers could easily be a addition. But with Abrupt Decay plus Terminate plus Fatal Push, which they're all playing as main deck, that seems really ambitious. However, if this goes to a game 3 and they don't see any of that, because I don't think they're going to want to bring it in for like Lingering Souls. The only cards that we have that they can kill are Snapcaster Mage and Lingering Souls tokens plus Manlands. All right, well, this is a great example of a keepable hand in this matchup, and you don't want to mulligan at all in Thoughtseized matchups if you can't. Like a random 6 is not going to be better than this, so we'll keep it. It's not ideal, but at the same time, it's not awful. Yeah, so like our opponent will Thoughtseize us, they'll probably take the Fatal Push here. And then this is definitely the type of matchup where Unburial Rites on a Snapcaster Mage is totally reasonable. It's not great, but I mean that's a lot of value because we can do it twice. If our opponent kills a Snapcaster Mage again, we can then get it back. So it's turning each Unburial Rites into a Snapcaster Mage plus another card, so it's almost like a 3-for-1 each time. So it could potentially be a 6-for-1. It's a lot of mana invested, but in terms of cards, it's a lot of cards gained for the Unburial Rites. I don't know what I would take as our opponent. All of these cards are just very good in this matchup. Our opponent took the Esper Charm, which is the only 2-for-1 that's explicitly in our hand. Or not explicitly, but it's the only card in our hand that is going to always be a 2-for-1, I guess is the best way for me to explain it. Unless they can counter it. We played the Flood Strand there because we want to set ourselves up for Serum Vision draws. Where we don't want to be casting a Serum Visions and then using our fetches later, which would mess up our scries. All right, so our opponent is being cognizant about their life total. They actually tapped it, or found a tapped land there, which is something that we should probably just note. We don't have a super big black presence in the deck anymore. We actually cut 7 black spells out of our deck. All right, and that was actually a great draw. So we will play the Nihil Spellbomb and leave up a Swamp to exile our opponent's graveyard. That also lets us leave up the Fatal Push here. Alright, so our opponent kept a bauble-heavy hand. They kept a hand most likely that had a lot of cantripping with the baubles and Thoughtseize. But it's not a hyper-aggressive start. It's already turn 3, and our opponent just got themselves to 13 now. Alright, Liliana the Last Hope is definitely one of the better cards they could have had in that situation. The thing is that they don't really have anything that they could buy back. So it is going to be annoying for us to interact with the Liliana before it ultimates, but until that time, it's not super scary for us because there's not all that much that our opponent can get out of it, if that makes sense. Right, so that's going to get, this is probably going to get a blue-white land, almost for sure. Alright, our opponent cycles a Street Wraith, which is interesting because this is a matchup where a Street Wraith could definitely be cast. This ultimate's 7, right? Okay, -7. And we can still beat the Liliana through the -7. It's just really hard. It would be a lot easier if we had an Iona, or sorry, a Elish Norn in this deck somewhere, which we don't right now. Our opponent knows that we have a Fatal Push, and I think they just are kind of, they just want us to use it here. Yeah, I was fine with that also. All right, so we're gonna get the white-black land in this deck, or sorry, the blue-black land in this deck now. One of them. All right, great. So we drew a Serum Visions. We are going to cast the Serum Visions now in case we draw a man land. All right, we drew Lingering Souls, which is actually perfect. Lingering Souls, well, it's not perfect because Liliana the Veil is really good against that kind of thing, but it's better than, I guess, the average draw. So we'll go ahead and we'll cast it now. We weren't really planning on doing anything else with our mana now. So our opponent can kill one with a Liliana, and then we can attack it and flash it back. So our opponent is going to get a lot of value off of this Liliana, the Last Hope. I was fine with our opponent using the Traverse here. They can just get, yeah, what'd they get? They got a Polluted Delta. They just wanted another land. That's fine. Okay, so our opponent's got a Death Shadow here. Alright, cool. So we have the Celestial Colonnade, which can attack down the Death Shadow. We'll flash back the Lingering Souls now, and we'll get in at the Liliana for 1. If our opponent goes to fetch with this Polluted Delta, we will cast the Path to Exile in response. Yes, so we will cast it in response. They don't have access to blue mana right now, which is why we're casting the Path to Exile now. If we draw a land off the top, we can pressure the Liliana the Veil with the Celestial Colonnade, which is nice. Okay. Opponent's grinding away at the spirits. Yeah, we're not in an ideal spot here. Opponent's going down to 8. Ranger of Eos. It's a good draw for our opponent. They're going to get 2 Death Shadows out of this, so we need to draw a board wipe. Yeah, that was a good draw for our opponent. That wasn't something that we could play around. They got 2 Death Shadows out of that. So the way that our opponent's definitely thinking here about how many they want to deploy to the field. I think they're basically deciding whether or not they think they can win the game if they only deploy one and hold up a Stubborn Denial. Okay, well, the fact that they tap that land leads me to believe that they probably don't have the card Stubborn Denial in their hand, which is very good for us. All right, at the end of the turn, I am going to crack this Nihil Spellbomb. All right, we drew Watery Grave, which wasn't great. The one thing that's nice about this, and I think we need to think about it a little bit, is basically how do we want to do this? We can shock this in, which I think we definitely need to do. We're going to send both spirits at our opponent this turn. Alright, we need to think about this. So we're at 16 right now, and our opponent can hit us right now for 13. If we attack our opponent with both spirits, that will drop our opponent to 6, which makes their death shadow 7s. So that means that we'd be taking we'd be taking a lot of damage on the way back. As it currently stands, we don't actually have to chump any of the death shadows. So I think actually what we want to do here is just pass the turn. No. I think we want to cast this Secure the Waste for a bunch and basically put our opponent on defense. Oh boy. I think I like this plan. We don't want this to get caught by Stubborn Denial. This is bad if our opponent has the card Maelstrom Pulse, but we're now putting 7 1/1s on the battlefield. And if our opponent attacks us this turn, we don't have to chump, which means that they wouldn't be doing super well on the backswing here. Opponent has 3 cards in hand. We're seeing if maybe they'll overcommit on the board a little bit. Alright, the draw of the Polluted Delta makes this a little bit more awkward for us. Alright, so our opponent did not attack. Alright, the draw of Snapcaster Mage is really good for us. Which means that we can snap Secure the Wastes. Wow, this is so tight. Alright, I think we definitely want to have one spirit attack the Liliana. We'll have one spirit attack the Liliana. With the plan of using the Snapcaster Mage to make a bunch of more 1/1s. Should be 3 more. So I've been playing around Stubborn Denial almost this whole game. In this situation here coming up, I don't think we can play around Stubborn Denial anymore. I mean, our opponent has so many cards in hand, 3. I guess 3 is not a lot, but 3 is pretty major in this matchup. Our opponent's back up to being able to ultimate the Liliana. See what our opponent's casting here. I think this is just a Street Wraith. They just want to hard cast a Street Wraith. Alright, so the fact that our opponent tapped so much mana leads me to believe that they have the card Street Wraith in hand. Okay. So this attack tells me that our opponent has... So if they have Street Wraith, Crack, Polluted Delta, they can reduce their life total by 5. Assuming they have another Shockland, which I'm not sure they do. So what I think the best block here is literally just to block 1. And we'll see what happens. Okay. Well, that went off without a hitch so far. So we're down to 11. I think going for the full-on no block was way too risky in that situation. So now I'm expecting our opponent to just hard cast a Street Wraith. We're going to Snapcaster, secure the waste, activate Colonnade, and hope that's enough. That's my plan as of right now, at least. Alright, so we'll cast the Snapcaster Mage. We'll see what our opponent has. Maybe nothing. Alright, and our opponent concedes. Good. So I think we might have read them correctly there, that they had Street Wraith and maybe even a couple more lands, something they couldn't really use. So the fact that they had the Snapcaster with that. So maybe we took a little bit of a conservative line that whole game. There's a chance that we should have been a little bit more aggressive, especially with the Colonnade. But tapping out for your whole turn for a Colonnade to trade with a Fatal Push is a huge tempo loss. You're spending 5 mana activating plus the 1 mana in with the attack there, and maybe at best you can get like an opt out of it. That seems super tempo negative in a turn where we used almost all of our mana every single turn. I think we might have actually used all of our mana every single turn. Alright, so we're here on match 3. This hand's great. The rental service that I used gave us mismatched Inquisitions of Kozilek, which is always really awkward. Alright, this might be a Valakut strategy, which we're not set up to beat very well at all. Yeah, okay. So we need to get we need to, like, very quickly get out our Gifts Ungiven. But we also need to hit lands. So because we need to do both here. I think I'm going to get blue-black land here. I'm going to cast an Inquisition here this turn, and then next turn cast Serum Visions. But we want to get rid of as many cards as we can with these Inquisitions before they become dead cards. And they become dead cards very quick. Okay, so Sweltering Sun's Lightning Bolt doesn't do anything, so we'll take the Farseek. Our opponent just has 2 lands. Okay, our opponent drew the card Prismatic Omen, which can be bad. Alright, cool. So we drew a Gifts Ungiven, which is great. That means that this turn, for sure, we will be casting a Serum Visions. And we're definitely playing the Shambling Vent also. Okay, that's not good. Not finding any lands here is not great. One thing we can do, which is nice, though, is we can cast the Collective Brutality next turn to get rid of a couple of cards from our hand. Alright, our opponent found a forest off of their search. They played another mountain. So we know for sure that they just have Bolt, Sweltering Suns, and possibly a couple other things in their hand. Alright, this is turning into very bad territory now by missing our land again. I think we need to escalate with 2 modes. And we're going to discard Iona, because Iona is the card that we're going to want to reanimate, if possible. They drew another Prismatic Omen. Alright, we're going to take these Sweltering Suns, because that actually can draw them another card. The Bolt cannot. And we are not really set up in a position where Bolt is important. Our opponent drew a Steve. Steve's not very threatening as of now, at least. Alright, cool. We drew a land. That's very good. Basically, we have a question here of whether or not we want to get some Lingering Souls online, or if we want to get the Inquisition to take the Prismatic Omen or the Bolt. I don't think there's really a right answer to that, but I'm going to get the Souls going, because the Souls are at least a little bit of a clock. If we were to miss on lands the next turn, it would give us something else to do with our mana, as well as cast the Inquisition. Alright, our opponent drew another land, but thankfully this isn't really doing too much. They'll probably play another Prism. Okay, so we know that the only card that they have in their hand is Lightning Bolt. Alright, we're going to attack our opponent for 2 here. And then the tentative plan is to... well, it doesn't work very well because our opponent has... because our opponent has the bolt. Yeah, I don't know. So what I was thinking of is we could path our own spirit, but if our opponent bolts the spirit in response, that's really bad for us. I guess it does get our opponent to use the ball. I don't know. I'm not sure if that was a correct play or not. Our opponent's just more or less flailing right now. They don't really have anything. Okay, they drew another Secure Tri-Builder, which is fine. I mean, that's their 7th land, which isn't good, but at the same time, it could, things could definitely be worse for us. All right, cool. So we drew a land here. We can attack our opponent for 4. Then next turn we can reanimate Iona. So our opponent really has to hit on exactly this turn, or they're gonna become locked out of casting green spells. Alright, our opponent drew a land for the turn, which is very good for us. Okay. Take it. Alright, we are going to cast Gifts Ungiven, targeting our opponent. We have to get Unburial Rites, and we'll put another card into our graveyard that theoretically... okay, so our opponent's bolting us in response. I don't know why they would do that. Okay, we want Unburial Rites, and we can put any other card in our whole deck in the graveyard. I guess we'll put a Fatal Push in our graveyard because we don't want to draw it. We don't have any more cards in here that can be like value accumulated. The only other thing we could do is put like a snap or a Cryptic Command in our graveyard because we could theoretically like snap it back, but we don't want to. We really don't want to do that. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and lock our opponent out of casting green spells. Yeah, green spells. Alright, so our opponent can't cast Primeval Titan, and they can't cast Scape Shift. If they have Through the Breach, we get got a little bit, but that's fine. If we can't play around everything, so Through the Breach gets us pretty good. But especially with the Prismatic Omen type thing, in my opinion, or maybe not opinion's the wrong word, but in my experience, that usually means that our opponent is not on the Through the Breach plan. Okay. Well, we were able to win that game, which is good. Alright, we'll get rid of these Supreme Verdicts. They seem really bad. The Fatal Pushes also seem really bad. The Negates seem good. The Spell Quellers seem pretty good, as well as the Geists. The Gristlebrand is not very good. It's just super clunky. The Paths are also not great. I'm gonna cut one of them. If our opponent has Obstinate Baloth, that can be a big issue for us. So I guess we'll leave 1 in, or 2 in rather. And I mean, the Lingering Souls was fine there, but at the same time, it wasn't great. So I guess we'll cut the other Lingering Souls. We're not going to win the game by having our opponent, or having us, just like attack our opponent for 1 repeatedly. This hand just cantrips into infinity, which honestly seems kind of fine. Has a Thoughtseize and has Spell Queller, so we're not going to lose to. We're not going to lose to some like slower draws, it doesn't look like, with this hand, which is nice. Alright, I'm actually going to get the blue-black again here, so that would let us cast Serum Visions this turn and next turn. Or sorry, this turn and then Thoughtseize next turn while playing the Creeping Tar Pit tap, but we also want to hit our lands. And, yeah, this works out very well, actually. So we have the Gifts Ungiven, we have the Snapcaster Mage. see if our opponent has a 2-mana play. They do indeed. They have a Prismatic Omen, which is a good card. Prismatic Omen is a good card, but it's a little bit worse in this matchup than some of the other control decks, because we're more or less just trying to get our opponent. Okay, so they have the Obstinate Baloth, and it's a good thing that we didn't make them discard it, because they would just get it onto the battlefield. So we're taking the Explorer from them. They're actually going to be able to cast the Obstinate Baloth this turn, which is a little bad for us. It'd be ideal if we could have spell quelled that, but what are you going to do? Opponent will probably play Mountain Obstinate Baloth. Okay, so they played the Mountain, and then they'll probably play the Baloth here. Yeah, okay. Alright, so that's fine. We're just going to have to kill our opponent before they can get value off of the Baloth. Alright, so we'll cast Serum Vision to kick it off here. The Path to Exile is actually not the worst. In this case, if we have to wind up racing this Baloth, which we might. The Field of Ruin is not useful in this matchup anymore. Well, I guess we could have gotten him off that Valakut. Yeah, I don't know what was correct there. I'm going to here play the Island Serum Visions now to get that path. Put that on the bottom, put that on the bottom. And I think this is a very interesting turn here, which is whether or not we should be pathing this Obstinate Baloth, I guess, is kind of the key here. I think we do. I don't know. This becomes the 6th mountain for our opponent, which isn't good. So every spell that our opponent draws is now doing damage to us, which isn't great, I guess. Yeah, I don't really know. I don't know if that was correct or not. I think we might be a turn slow here. Yeah, so this fetch is going to be able to actually do a 6 damage, which is not good. Yeah, I don't know. There's probably a way we could have played this that didn't involve us just like losing like this. Search for Tomorrow would do another 3. Yeah, so it looks like our out is that we have to have our opponent draw green spells for 3 consecutive turns. That looks like that's our out. Iona and Unburial Rites. The thing is that if we were taking damage off of the there wasn't really an opportunity where we could have gotten rid of the Baloth in any other way. Yeah, so we'll name green, and we just have to hope our opponent literally draws green spells for the next few turns. We're dead to any land. Yeah, okay, so we're dead. Assuming our opponent wants to go for it, which I don't see why they wouldn't. Yeah, okay. Alright, that killed us. Okay. So I guess I kind of have to eat my words a little bit there. I was just talking about how Prismatic Omen wasn't necessarily great in this matchup because we're looking to combo our opponent out to win the game. But it turns out there that it was very good. So who knows? This hand produces a quick clock on our opponent, but doesn't have any discard and doesn't have enough lands. I'm keeping this because playing a turn 3 Geist into a turn 4 Spell Queller is really good, but I'm not sure if it's going to be fast enough. Alright, that was a pretty solid draw from us. We are going to shock this in. I'm not sure what spell we would negate here. versus which ones we would opt for. A Sakura Tribe Elder is one that we can't even negate, so I think that's fine. That'll resolve. And we will opt end of turn. And we'll hit a land here, hopefully. Nope, that's not a land. Negate's not a land either. Untap, draw, land. Alright, we drew a land. Perfect. Alright, so the more important of the spells that we have is definitely the Geist. The Geist is our primary concern here. We're just going to get an island. We do want to conserve our life total, to some extent. So we'll start with the Geist here. Our opponent will be able to block the Geist the first time with the Sakura Tribe Elder. If our opponent has in like Sweltering Suns or something like that still in the deck, then that's good on our opponent for keeping a hand that does that. All right, so our opponent does have the Prismatic Omen, so we're up to 3 lands. All right, we drew another Spell Queller. So now I think we're on the like Spell Quell our opponent's spells into infinity type plan. We can also snap opt if our opponent doesn't cast a spell, which also puts down a 2-power clock and also lets us draw 1 more card deep. Because it would be ideal if we could get the Gifts Ungiven up. But I think that we are going to be losing very, very quickly and very hard to a Sweltering Suns or something like that here. So I think we have to just leave the Spell Queller up. Could be wrong. See if our opponent casts like an Obstinate Baloth here. Alright, Search for Tomorrow. Yeah, we will definitely go ahead and Spell Queller the Search for Tomorrow. So unless our opponent has like a Lightning Bolt or something like that here. Alright, cool. We drew a land, which is good. One thing that the Spell Queller is really not good against our opponent drawing more lands to get rid of the Spell Quellers. So I don't think I want to Spell Quell again here, maybe. I think this might just be a negate. Yeah, this is a negate, and then I'm going to play the Snapcaster Mage at the end of the turn, I think, is my plan here to win the game. Because if our opponent has just another land here, then they can shock the Spell Queller and then deal 3 more damage to something. Reclamation Sage. Okay, that's fine. Please destroy it. It's a May ability, but they might not. Okay, they didn't do it. At the end of the turn, we will just flash in the Snapcaster Mage, hopefully for the win. Cool. I'm not really sure what our opponent would have to have here in order to not die. It'd have to be some sort of pact, I believe. Don't matter. And hopefully our opponent realizes that they're dead here. Alright, and we've won that match. So that brings us now to round 3. And you can see the definite power of the combo control finish. We were able to win game 1 with the combo control, and then on game 3 there we were able to win on our alternate plan of Geist plus then like Spell Quell everything into infinity. Alright, let's hope that this round goes as well as that last round did. Alright, so this is the first hand that I really don't like. It doesn't have any blue mana. Even if it does get blue mana, we still got the Unburial Rites in our hand, which is basically just kind of a mulligan to 6 right off the bat. So I am going to mulligan that hand. This hand's significantly more reasonable. We don't want a second cantrip on the top, especially with double fetches. Alright, our opponent's on another Valakut strategy. Wow. Alright. We have a bunch of very bad cards in this matchup, but we have the Gifts Ungiven in our hand, which is a pretty reasonable way of winning the game, hopefully, but we need lands. I guess I'm bottom top. Yeah, and we are now very seriously on the turn 4 Gifts Ungiven, turn 5 Reanimate, hope you don't have it plan. Which is very unlikely to happen. I kept the land on top so that we could absolutely do that. There's a chance that that was not necessarily the right play, and the right play would have been to wait for or try to look for a discard or something like that. Alright, our opponent plays Scourge Tribe Elder. Alright, so what would be a good draw off the top here? Yeah, we got the Hollowed Fountain, that's fine. I wonder what the best draw would be off the top here. Certainly not that. Okay, so something that I think might actually be worthwhile here is that even if what we're trying to do is a little bit too slow, I don't want to show our opponent, if possible, that we have black mana in our deck. I don't want them to see discard. I don't want them to be thinking about discard when they sideboard the first time. So I think there is some merit in that. I mean, they know that we'll be casting a black spell, but they haven't seen any black lands. We'll be Unburial Righting a... like, Unburial Rights is a black card, I guess, is the way I should have phrased that. This is a Primeval Titan. We will path the Prime Time with the trigger on the stack to search for lands. Okay. Summoner's Pact resolves. We will path the Primeval Titan, and then it can find some more lands. So it'll be able to find 3 lands here total. So it'll probably first find a mountain, and then it'll find a Valakut and a mountain, probably. No, I just found 2 more Valakuts. Okay. Interesting. Alright, we're at 18, 18, and 17. There's no difference between the 2 of them. So we'll just pass here. Our opponent's going to have to pay for the Summoner's Pact here, or they'll just lose the game. So unless they have exactly land Primeval Titan here, we might be able to somehow sneak this one out. Okay, Prismatic Omen's not good. Wood Elves. Wood Elves going to deal us 9 damage. Okay. Alright, so we have a really very real question here, which is basically, do we want to show our opponent that we have a Gifts Ungiven Reanimator package in our deck? If we reanimate... Yeah, I can't see, honestly, a situation in which we would be able to win this game, regardless of what we do. Because our opponent's going to be able to just 9 us with any land next turn. So I think that our concession there was fine. I don't like the Fatal Pushes in this matchup. I don't like a lot of Path to Exiles in this matchup. I don't like the Lingering Souls in this matchup. I do like these 6 for sure. In addition, I do like the 2 Negates. I don't like the 2 Verdicts. I think that's how we boarded last time. You could definitely make an argument that the Dispel has a little bit more utility than the Path. The Dispel would be for their Summoner's Pact. Okay, this hand has a Geist. It needs some lands, but a lot of our hands also need lands. I think it needs a white land, I guess. So this has discard, white land, and the ability to snap discard. So I think I like that. I think that's a significantly better than normal draw with this deck. We have 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 white sources, I believe, that we can draw. I'm starting with this one in case we draw tap lands. Alright, Search for Tomorrow is definitely their best, so they have a Farseek and lands is what they kept. Which will put them back a whole turn. Okay, they played the Valakut. Alright, we drew Collective Brutality, and I think that the Collective Brutality is actually good enough where we are going to cast it this turn, because it'll take away one of their... you know what? I changed my mind. I think it might be more valuable later. I think getting down this turn 3 Geist is more important. And it's a good thing we did that. Okay. I think our opponent might be a little bit confused because we haven't shown them any white mana this game, and last game all we did was show them white mana, so we'll see. Opponent's going to cast their Farseek this turn. They played the Stomping Grounds. So they have 2 unknowns. I'm trying to think how... So we can Collective Brutality, snap Collective Brutality to increase our clock at some point. So I think that we just want to get the basic planes here. The first Collective Brutality would actually be able to pick us up over 18, and 18 is kind of the magic number with this deck. That's what 7 lands would do on Escape Shift. Alright, so we got a Geist. We did not know that our opponent had a Stomping Ground, which is good to know. That's the first time we've seen the card Stomping Ground. Okay, so here I'm going to Collective Brutality, looking at their hand and making them discard by pitching the Path to Exile. Okay, so our opponent actually just has all lands in hand. Alright, that'll drop our opponent to 16. We drew the Unburial Rites. Are we planning on going on the Gifts Ungiven plan? I guess we have to make that decision. So this turn we'll drop our opponent to 10. And then next turn we can drop our opponent to 8 and have enough power on there to kill them. So I guess we don't want it. Yeah, we don't want it. Because next turn we can cast the Snapcaster to flashback the Collective Brutality, and then still our opponent won't know that we have the plan that we were planning on there. I know that was real specific, guys, the plan that we were planning on there, but yeah. Alright, so we'll do the same thing. We're going to Collective Brutality, making our opponent discard, and escalate 2 modes with flashback. Alright. Choose target opponent, pay black, pay black. We will discard the Unburial Rites, and once again our opponent has all lands in hand. Okay. So Search for Tomorrow happens. I don't know what else our opponent could have here. But it looks like we'll be moving on to the next game. Alright, cool. All right, do we want to change anything up this game, or for this match, or for this game rather? And I don't believe we do. I think we'll just submit. Actually, there's a chance to Secure the Waste is really bad. We're gonna bring in a Dispel. Do that real quick. The Secure the Waste is 2 mana intensive for too little of an effect. It's much better like super late game. All right, this is probably the most interesting hand that we've had. So what this hand actually allows us to do is it allows us to make our opponent discard raw cards. And with our opponent already mulliganing to 6, I think that's actually fine. That means that turn 3 and 4 will make our opponent actually just go straight up empty-handed, which means that okay, our opponent's on 5. This is very good for us if we draw any sort of action early, which we of course don't because we're not lucky. We're going to start on Watery Grave tapped. We do want to preserve our life total, which is more important than thinning. Statistically, thinning doesn't do all that much. We'll play a Flooded Strand here. This will give us the option to Snapcaster Mage if we want to. Alright, we will not, in the face of Sakura Tri-Builder. That's not what we're going to be looking to do. We'll get white here. Hollowed Fountain, no. Alright, we drew an Opt. I think I like just firing this off right now. We're just going to make our opponent discard 2 cards now, then they'll draw, and then we'll make them discard 2 more cards and Opt. And then our opponent will just be playing off the top of their deck. Alright, so our opponent didn't do anything again. We're going to play this, and we're going to make our opponent discard 2 more cards. Alright, cool. We got Scape Shift and Primeval Titan, so our opponent's just playing off the top of their library. We were able to take away 4 threats with 2 cards there, which was really cool. Looks like our opponent did draw a card. Good card here, though. They drew a Manduli Acid Moss. That is a good card. Wow. Alright. So we will go get a Hollowed Fountain here. We will pay 2 life, and we will Opt. We'll put the Search for Azcanta on the bottom of our library. Okay. Alright, we drew a Serum Visions, which we will cast. Alright, we drew a Gifts Ungiven, which is excellent, and a Cryptic Command. We will top, and we will play the Shambling Vent this turn, and then hopefully next turn we'll be able to cut our opponent off of, in a couple of turns, be able to cut our opponent off of casting spells that matter. Alright, I like keeping, or the reason I kept the Cryptic Command on top is if our opponent plays something like land, Primeval Titan here, we want to be able to counter that. Alright, the fact that they did not is good news for us, which means that we can Gifts Ungiven here, targeting our opponent. And we will take Iona, and I guess the other card doesn't really matter. I guess at this point we don't want to draw a Search for Tomorrow, so we'll put them in the graveyard. And we will hard cast from our hand the Unburial Rites. If our opponent has like Surgical Extraction, this isn't great, but other than that, I don't know why they would have brought in the card Surgical Extraction. I don't even think a lot of them play the card Surgical Extraction. I don't know what they're getting with the Summoner's Pact. They got a Tireless Tracker. I mean, we're still going to name green. Like, they're not going to be able to play green spells. So, I don't know why they wanted to do that. But okay. So our opponent has to pay that or they'll lose the game. And now we have Cryptic Command backup on our Iona. So I can't really see us losing the game from here. We were just able to lock out our opponent. Yeah, there we go. Excellent. All right, guys, and we'll move on to match number 5. You can see there the power of this deck over some of the other more traditional blue-white or other Esper control decks is that the matchup against Scapeshift can get really, really hairy because both lands and spells kill you after a certain point. Especially Esper that doesn't play too many land destruction spells, like draw-go variants and stuff like that, will be able to counter all of your spells into infinity, but not be able to really turn the corner. You can't win a game in which you're not applying pressure. So this deck can apply pressure and also has that combo finish of the Iona, which is really cool. Like you saw in that game, it didn't even have to be on turn 5 where you're getting the Iona into play. I think we got it on like turn 7 or something like that, but we made our opponent discard 4 cards, 3 of which were the ways that they like actually try to win the game. Okay, so we have the Collective Brutality pitching Iona hand with the Supreme Verdict. I'm in for this. We've got Opt, removal spell, Verdict if we need it. So if our opponent's on a fast hand. This should be a very fine keep. Or sorry, on a fast deck, this should be a fine keep. If our opponent's playing, Scapeshift again, it's going to be a little bit uninteresting. I wouldn't want to really record a video where I knew that my opponent would be on 3 consecutive decks of the same type. So hope that's not the case. Alright, basic island into Serum Visions. So it could be Storm, could be Control. Opponent bottom topped. I don't know if we can definitively say what our opponent's on. It also could be Blue Moon. There's a chance that we should be fetching basics here. I'm not sure. I think with the drawing of the Esper Charm, I'm okay with us shocking here to cast the Collective Brutality, pitching an Iona and looking at their hand and draining them. I think that's fine. Yeah, I'll do that. And then we will choose 2 modes, those 2, choose opponent, discard Iona. And we'll see what kind of deck our opponent's on. Huh. Alright, so our opponent's just on blue-black control, which is interesting. Which of these cards do we really not want our opponent casting twice? I don't think we really care all that much. I'm tempted to take the Collective Brutality because the best card in our hand is Esper Charm, and they currently can't counter that. So sure, let's take the Collective Brutality. Alright, we know our opponent has 2 Snapcaster Mages, which is it's a lot of value. Alright, they played the Swamp, and they're going to pass the turn. Most likely Thought Scouring at the end of the turn. Alright, we drew a land, which is a very good draw. When our opponent casts this Thought Scour at the end of the turn, I'm going to cast the Esper Charm. Okay, cool. So they cast the Thought Scour. We are going to cast the Esper Charm to draw 2 cards. And we drew another Esper Charm. That's great. Alright, so our opponent has 6 cards in hand. We have 5. We're more or less at parity with them right now. No one's ahead on board. No one's doing anything. The only thing is that our opponent has 2 Snapcaster Mages, which is more Snapcaster Mages than we have. Alright, we drew a Polluted Delta, which is a good draw. I'm just going to play that and pass the turn. We'll probably try to Esper Charm to draw cards at the end. Our opponent should probably Snapcaster in flashback one of their spells here. That would make sense to me. Like if it were me, I would be doing that. We know that. Okay, our opponent's playing red too, so our opponents are playing Grixis. Interesting. All right. Well, this isn't what I expected would our opponent to have here. I think in that case, I'm fine with just opting end of turn here. I don't want to get this Esper Charm countered. I'm going to bottom another land. Okay, we drew another one anyway. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and get the Hallowed Fountain here tapped. Alright, drawing an Inquisition is actually a very good draw. We'll just go ahead and start off by casting that. We know that our opponent has at least 2 Snapcaster Mages. We're going to be able to take one here, which is nice. Okay, our opponent shocked themselves. Oh, they used this Polluted Delta. Are they going to Cryptic Command here? That's a really aggressive Cryptic Command. They're just begging for us to not have a counterspell here. Wow. So, just for reference here, what our opponent is not making a good play here, but they're going to get away with it. This would be a super blowout if they didn't have... Yeah, this is... I guess, I don't know, maybe they're just expecting us to not play counter magic in our deck. I don't know why they would expect that. We're going to take this opportunity to use the Esper Charm. Alright, Fatal Push is not good in this matchup. Yeah, I don't know why they would expect us to not have counter spells there, but I mean, they got it right. We didn't have any counter spells, so... Man, the whole dynamic of this game just changed a whole bunch because our opponent took a big risk like that. If our opponent plays like a Tasigur or something like that, we will path it. Snapcaster Mage on Serum Visions. Alright, well we have 2 Fatal Pushes, so we will... Oh, a Collective Brutality, interesting. Okay. Wonder how many modes our opponent's going to use on it. So this coming turn here would be a perfect turn to draw Unburial Rites or Snapcaster Mage. If we get Snapcaster Mage, then we get to Snapcaster Esper Charm, which is great. We get to draw a couple cards. If we draw Unburial Rites, we can lock our opponent out of casting blue spells, which would mean that Terminate would get us, but that's about it. Otherwise, they can just Snapcaster Cryptic our guy back. Did they discard? Oh, they did discard. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so they did discard. They discarded the Spell Snare, so they have used a Snapcaster and a Spell Snare now. Okay, we drew a land, which isn't good. We'll conceal that information from our opponent, and we will use the Fatal Push right now. One card that is very good in this matchup is the card Secure the Wastes. Opponent continues to Thought Scour themselves. Alright, so they do have Taskers in their deck. And what are they leaving up that's 5 mana? Is it Kolaghan's Command plus Negate or something like that? Probably is. We'll Thoughtseize our opponent, try to take their Snapcaster Mage or make them use it now. Before they can get Snapcaster Cryptic value off of it. No, okay, so they have Cryptic Command here, so they're gonna counter the Thoughtseize and draw a card. Wow. Once again, just, very... I'm gonna hold the island in hand in case they cast a Kolaghan's Command. I'll probably discard that to the Kolaghan's Command. Okay, our opponent's definitely on like the Snap Beats plan, it looks like. I'm surprised they didn't want that to the Fatal Push to resolve. Okay, so our opponent did just have the Bolt hand. And then they're going to try to Snap Bolt us probably at the end of our turn. Alright, well, I'm not going to lie, we were pretty weak to the double bolt into the Snap Bolt plan. We will push your Snapcaster Mage. So we don't know any of the cards in their hand now. They're down to just 2 cards. If we can draw Unburial Rites, we're still in very good shape. If we can draw Snapcaster Mage, we might be in good shape. Drew another Snapcaster Mage. Oh boy. Alright. We're going to go ahead and path your Snapcaster Mage. If you have a counterspell, we'll path it again. And so we've taken 12 damage now off of Lightning Bolts. And they have another one. Okay, well, you know what? That's, it's not something we really would have been able to play around. It's a lot of Lightning Bolts. Jeez. Okay, so it appears that our opponent is still going to be on Bolts after board because it worked out so well for him there. So we're going to take out the Verdicts. We're going to bring in the Geists because now that we don't have the Verdicts, that seems fine. The Nihil Spellbombs seem better in this matchup than in just the blue-white matchup. I'm not sure if 3 is right. 3 seems like a lot. The Fatal Push might not have too many targets, so we'll probably cut some number of them. We can always Collective Brutality away their threats. We'll probably keep 2 paths in for the Tassigers, maybe. Yeah, we should probably be at 3. I do like Lingering Souls in this matchup, so those are going to come in. I don't think we can keep in the Iona just because it doesn't... If we choose black or blue, it doesn't really lock our opponent out of being able to deal with the Iona. They still have ways that they can deal with it, which is a little unfortunate. The Negates and the Dispels are coming in. Our opponent seems to be very aggressive with their lines. And hopefully we can punish them a little bit by bringing those in. So we have 3 cards that we have to cut here. Probably trim on our discard a little bit. We'll get rid of 1 Inquisition because we don't care too much about their non-Cryptic Command cards. And we'll probably cut... Yeah, I guess I kind of amend what we're saying there. I'm going to cut both Brutalities. It's a lot of mana, and it doesn't really answer any creatures, and we don't really care about our life gain as much as we maybe would otherwise. Unfortunately, we've drawn our Gristlebrand in our hand here. So, would we keep 6 without this Gristlebrand? We're actually out of ways now with no Collective Brutalities to discard this Gristlebrand. I guess we could Esper Charm ourselves to discard it. So is this 6 better than a random 6 with no Gristlebrand? And I don't think so, so I'm going to keep it. I mean, I guess the Gristlebrand is not. We could always Thoughtseize ourselves or something like that. I mean, it's not. It's in any case, we're probably gonna have to 2-for-1 ourselves in order to get rid of it, get it out of our hand. But I guess it could be worse. We will bottom another land and keep a Snapcaster. Our opponent's also starting off with the Serum Vision hands. Next turn, we were going to get a blue-black land on this with this Polluted Delta and cast Serum Visions. We're doing this first so that we don't screw up our scry the next turn, so we can actually draw both cards if we want to keep them both on top. Search for Azcanta plus Unburial Rites. Okay, so we don't want the Unburial Rites. We really want to try to find a way to resolve that Search for Azcanta, though. So what we're hoping is that our opponent wants to cantrip here and not leave up Mana Leak or something like that. And rats. Our opponent has kept up Mana Leak, which is smart on their part. Alright, so we are just going to pass the turn then in that case. And maybe try to draw 2 cards off of the Esper Charm, or maybe even bait a counter spell during our opponent's turn to draw 2 cards off of the Esper Charm. And I think that's what we're going to do. We are going to purposely run this Esper Charm into counter magic. So we're hoping our opponent counters this. No. Okay, they did not. Wow, that's a lot of lands to hit in a row. Jeez. Alright, we'll start by Inquisitioning on our opponent and then hope to force the Search for Azcanta down after taking a counterspell. Wow. Alright, our opponent was real hardcore on the Serum Visions. They had a Shadow of Doubt. Jeez, I love that card. That's something that hopefully in the video series soon we'll be able to show off. We're going to take a Snapcaster Mage because we don't want our opponent casting any of these cards twice. Looks like they were trying to like really get value out of that Shadow of Doubt, and we did not put ourselves in a position where we got by it, which was good on us. We have to remember that they have it in hand. They might just cycle it at the end of the turn because it doesn't do anything anymore. Well, it's not that it doesn't do anything anymore. It still does things, obviously. It just doesn't, yeah. It's not, like, Shadow of Doubt's a much better gotcha card than it is anything else. So we both have full hands. We are significantly ahead because we have the Search for Azcanta. However, we missed a land drop that turn. I'm expecting our opponent to cast Serum Visions and then cast Tasigur here. Oh no, they're going to Thought Scour first. Interesting. Okay. They hit a Creeping Tar Pit, which is good. One less threat that we have to worry about. Their deck is very threat light, like very threat light. So this is all good here. They're going to cast their Serum Visions. They bottomed 2 cards. I'm surprised they still have the Terminate in the deck, honestly. Alright, I think our plan here is that on our upkeep we're going to path the Tasigur, which means that there's a very high chance we can flip the Search this turn. We're going to path the Tasigur with the Azcanta trigger on the stack. We're going to put any non-land on the bottom. If it's a land, I think we actually probably will keep it, though. That will go in the graveyard. We would love to transform the Search. And then we draw for turn. Perfect. And we drew a land. That's great. in this kind of matchup, it's very important that we play around Shadow of... Well, I guess not Shadow of Doubt specifically now, but we should at least keep it in mind. So I'm just going to get the basic here, and we will plan on most likely just getting some value off of our Search for Escanta while we can, until our opponent can blow it up somehow or something. But our opponent has at least 2 cards in their hand that don't really do anything. Terminate and Fatal Push, especially on this board. So I think we're in a very good position. We have 1 less card than our opponent right now, but our opponent is playing a bunch of cards that are not great in this matchup specifically. Like the Thought Scour there is just a random draw. And they actually have gotten rid of a significant portion of their lands now. That's 4 lands there. Okay, they're just hard casting a Leyline from the Void now. Yeah, we don't care about that. That's fine. We can blow that up with a Esper Charm, or we can just not care about it. Which is a strategy I actually like a lot here, which is the not caring about it strategy. So we'll do that. We will take advantage of our opponent being tapped out to use this Thoughtseize here, and we'll take a Snapcaster Mage. So once again, we're just leaving our opponent with a bunch of cards that don't really do anything, and we will continue to draw off of our Search for Escanta. Okay, so our opponent drew a Polluted Delta for the turn. They might be getting close to running out of lands. I could certainly see a situation in which we will be hard casting this Crystal Brand in this deck and then just drawing cards off of it, which is kind of cool. Alright, our opponent top-bottomed. Oops. And we will use the Escanta. We will definitely take a Secure the Wastes. That actually sounds great. We know that our opponent has these 4 cards in hand. None of those cards can interact very favorably with a Secure the Wastes, so we're actually just going to take this opportunity here to cast a large Secure the Wastes and hope that it can beat our opponent down over the course of 4 turns. So that's good. Unfortunately, it did exile our spell after we cast it, but our opponent is now using Fatal Push and what's this? Oh, I guess we didn't know 1 card in our opponent's hand. Maybe that was wrong. I thought that I was keeping that up to date. Is this a Culligan's Command? If this is a Culligan's Command, it could be bad. Okay, they return Snapcaster Mage with the Culligan's Command. That's actually... It's not great, but it's not the worst, because we couldn't really have interacted with that anyway. Our opponent is going to start being able to loop Snapcaster Mages, though, which is never fun. So they can now Snapcast the Culligan's Command, kill another warrior, return the other Snapcaster Mage. Alright, we'll begin by getting in there with some warriors here. Okay, that's fine. I think here I like casting the Serum Visions. See if our opponent wants to cast that Kolaghan's Command now in response to try to rebuy the Snapcaster Mage. And if they do, we will... okay, so now what we're going to do here is we're going to try to find a negate off of this. And we do find exactly negate. Perfect. So we'll place these in any order, and then we will negate the Kolaghan's Command so that they can't get the Snapcaster back, and then we actually get to draw here and set up our Scry for next turn. So that worked out really well. We were able to bait our opponent into making that play. Our opponent's using all of their removal spells here, or at least a good portion of them, on cards that don't matter too much in this matchup. Play a land. Or, sorry, it's not... The cards that our opponent is casting don't matter too much in this matchup, and they have now cast, like, 4 spells to try to get rid of these warriors that have been just kind of going to town on our opponent. Alright, here I think I like... I think I kind of like trying to make our opponent discard here. Yeah, let's do it. We'll cast the Snapcaster Mage. See if our opponent wants to counter it. No. Okay. Esper Charm. The other thing we can do with this is we can try to blow up their ley line. I don't think I'm super high on that, though. Basically just get our opponent to use all these cards. Okay, so they're going to terminate that. So it's already been a 1-for-1. See what our opponent does with this. Opponent counter squalls the Esper Charm. Okay, I mean, we'll opt. If we hit exactly Dispel, we might as well Dispel that. We didn't hit Dispel, but that's also a good one, so we'll let that one go. That's fine. Okay. Cool. Alright, so we'll take this time to drop the Geist of St. Traft, which will put our opponent pretty much dead next turn. Alright. So I got a little hairy there at a couple points, but I think overall we did a very good job navigating that. I think I'm going to bring in the other Spell Bomb because it does seem like our opponent is very much on the Kolaghan's Command rebuy plan, and if we can get some value out of that, that seems excellent. On the draw, I think I want to cut a Thoughtseize. I don't want our opponent to be able to get a very big life advantage on us, and one of the ways that it looks like our opponent can definitely do that would be by getting the some of the damage off of Thoughtseizes and then combining it with bolts. Alright, well we got another one of those hands, which is a hand with Unburial Rites and Gristlebrand worse than a 6? And I think in this case the answer is yes. So we are going to mulligan. Keep drawing that Gristlebrand in our opening hands. I wonder what the odds are that we would open so many hands with that same card in it each time. Alright, our opponent casts the Serum Visions, and they top with it. I think we are going to get a blue-black land here and Inquisition our opponent, because we don't really have any specific cards that we want to draw. Taking the Snapcaster Mage seems pretty much good in almost all circumstances in this matchup. The rest of the cards our opponent has, they did top, but the rest of the cards that our opponent has don't seem to, once again, interact super well. We're casting this other Serum Visions. Okay. The next turn, I think our plan is to get white, black maybe with the Flooded Strand, and then cast the Serum Visions. Opponent top-bottomed this time, and they drew a Watery Grave. Alright, we're going to go ahead and get the Godless Shrine. Lingering Souls is, yeah, all these cards are great. Top, perfect. Alright, our opponent's going to have to beat some Lingering Souls, which is going to be really hard for them. Alright, so we know that 3 of the cards in our opponent's hands are those 3, because of the way that they've played this so far. So I'm just going to get the island here, and if our opponent happens to have a counterspell in those 3, I'm cool with that. This Lingering Souls is a very good card. Okay, our opponent countersqualls the first half of it. That definitely could have been worse. Fine with that too. We still know that the 3 cards in our opponent's hand are Island, Mountain, Fatal Push. None of those cards are super threatening to us. They play the island here. Wonder what they drew here. A Tasigur. Okay. So they still have Mountain, Fatal Push in their hand. We drew our own Snapcaster Mage. Huh. So we can make our opponent discard and get them empty-handed. We can draw some cards. We can cast a Lingering Souls. I think this turn... You know what? I think I'm going to take an aggressive line here. This is a super aggressive line, but I think it might actually be correct. I'm going to get an island here, and we are going to bounce their Tasigur to their hand and draw a card, because we know that we are drawing, or we know what 2 cards they have in their hand, and we know that they can't currently cast the Tasigur again. So this is fogging us for a couple of turns, as well as making it very hard on our opponent. Yeah, look at that. Okay, so our opponent's not casting that. They have Fatal Push and 1 unknown in hand. Alright, we drew a Polluted Delta, which is a great draw. We will play the Search for Azcanta. If our opponent counters this, we'll make them discard their remaining 2 cards. Okay, Cryptic Command. That's fine. We'll have them draw a random card, and we'll make them discard now with the Oh, I'm sorry. We draw 2 cards now. I think I meant to push discard there, but you know what? The discarding 2 there seems really ambitious on our part. Yeah. So I think I'm actually pretty happy with how that ended up. Almost exclusively just because we drew Geist. But if we didn't draw Geist, it wouldn't have been very good. So we do know our opponent has a Fatal Push. Yeah, if we would have made our opponent discard there, they would have had 1 random card and no Tassiger. Looks like our opponent's fine delving away the rest of their graveyard. Okay. Interesting. I was going to say a Path to Exile there would have been very nice. We're also 1 mana away from bouncing their Tassiger again with the Snapcaster Mage, which would have also been kind of cool. Use the Opt right now. Yeah, that's a very good one. I'm going to actually just go ahead and cast that right now. The Gifts Ungiven. We are going to get a Lingering Souls, a Celestial Colonnade, a Path to Exile, and a Secure the Wastes. This is a stack of cards that our opponent really doesn't want us to have. And 2 of them are going to end up in our hand, which is really nice. The Celestial Colonnade was just a... I just wanted a white land. If our opponent really doesn't want to give us the white land, that's fine. Okay, so our opponent seems like they're willing to give us... Okay. So they're trying to cut us off of the ability to cast some spells here. Alright, so they're bolting us. So we could be dead. That could have been a little bit of an ambitious line by us. Because this is going to take us down to 5. Fortunately, next turn we can cast Lingering Souls and flash back our Snapcaster Mage. So I'm going to start off by casting the Snapcaster Mage. Because if our opponent has Cryptic Command, we can counter that. Okay. So there's the path. We will path our opponent's creature. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and flash back the Lingering Souls. We still know our opponent has a Fatal Push in hand. There's a Counter Squall. Kolaghan's Command, make us discard, shock us, or something like that, so that we're dead to Snapcaster at any point. Okay, that is what it is. I guess we'll discard the Gristlebrand and hope that we draw Unburial Rites. So now we have to counter Snapcaster Mages. Okay, and they just drew a bolt. That's unfortunate. Alright, guys. Well, we went 3-2. We were able to beat Valakut twice. And lost a couple times to Control, which is kind of unfortunate. The Grixis deck usually has very good matchups against a lot of the other Control decks. I think the first match I made a couple of key misplays against regular blue-white. One of the things it looks like that, you know, especially with this build without the main deck counterspells, is that we are sacrificing quite a bit of late game and ability to interact with our opponent for the reanimation package. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is a very reasonable deck still. It's something that I've been playing for a long time. It's got a lot of cool, interesting lines, plays a lot of one-ofs, and interacts with your opponents on multiple different levels, which is really cool. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.